that's because I wanted to finish this video and I didn't feel like doing all the labor for it. Because this topic is not about fashion, it's about culture. Now, post 2017, Tumblr in general was a very strange place. Tumblr purge just happened. Thousands and thousands of people were migrating to Twitter and to Instagram, and no one really knew what was going to happen to Tumblr. Nevertheless, on Memfet Tumblr, because the tag was gone. It was completely deleted and marked as pornographic because of the influx of DDLG in the tag. So everyone's scattered. There's a lot of people on Pinterest, lots of people on Wattpad, and a lot of people on Instagram. Tumblr used to be the main hub for the aesthetic, and it just was not that way anymore. The coquette tag didn't really take off as much because it was a simple case of wrong place, wrong time. The wound was too fresh, and I think everyone just needed time to regroup. So an amino was created. And if you don't know what amino is, it is an app where people who are interested in different things, such as different fandoms, different subcultures, different fashions, can go and meet and make posts, polls, and basically just communicate with each other. It's like a new version of a forum. And on amino, the Doelet amino is created. Now, the person responsible for this, the legend, the savior, or she likes to call herself, no one else calls her this, the patron goddess of the Doelet. Tumblr user Faye Mold and Angel Milk, also known as Billy, a 23-year-old girl who says that she was in the aesthetic on Tumblr since at least 2010. Now, preface this, I necessarily did not see her on Tumblr. But here's the thing, the community was so huge. There's so many people that I didn't know. There's people who follow me on Tumblr now who said they've been following me since way back in Generation 1, and I never heard of them. And that's just because the community was massive. So it could be a simple case of just, I never ran into her. It's entirely possible. There's tons of people who are in the aesthetic that my friends ran into that I never ran into, and vice versa. Now, the Doelet aesthetic was very different. The name was decided in the amino as part of a poll because they decided that the coquette name was too sexual. The Doelet aesthetic really got its start on amino because that's where the name change happened, and people decided to move back to Tumblr slowly but surely. It wasn't huge, but it was still a sizable amount of people, enough where people were mutuals and knew each other's names. But more people, from my knowledge, were on amino. I can't be 100% because I came in towards the end of the amino's popularity. So I don't know how popular it was at its peak, but that's just what I saw. It was majority people that was on amino and a handful of people. I'm going to say, well, not a handful. I'm going to say about 20 people were on Tumblr, maybe more, that just didn't post as frequently. Now, the fashion of that time, non-existent. I'm not gonna lie. But it was kind of split into two. And people were more inspired by Nicole Dollinger than Lana Del Rey. So it was lots of soft fabrics, thin, lacy fabrics, longer dresses, more, I don't want to say ghostly, but just more delicate, more angelic. That's the term I'm looking for. It was more angelic looking. You wanted to look soft and pure. On the other side, which was the majority of people, honestly, it was just really no fashion at all, no real trends. People just kind of wore whatever clothes they had, like whatever t-shirt and jeans you had. And so that was the two halves of the aesthetic. And I have a theory as to why that is, but I'll get into that later when we start talking more about Billy. Now, the tag was more of a white femininity type of thing. And I mean race-wise, not color choice, but race. It upheld very Eurocentric views of femininity and purity and innocence. Everyone in the tag had felt the pressure to be innocent, pure angels. There is no more of the vulgarity or the messiness of girlhood. It was, you were a perfect, pure, traumatized angel. There was this energy that you were only valid if you yourself were a victim of child sexual abuse. And if you were a victim of child sexual abuse, you could only be pure. You could only be innocent. You had to be a virginal person, if not in physicality, as in actual virginity, but in appearance. You cannot mention anything as much as kissing or hugging someone without being sub-posted about by Billy for posting not safe for work content and a tag meant for minors. There was this energy that was perpetrated towards a lot of the girls of color in the tag, and it's very telling that there was only about 2 or 3. Majority of the girls of color did not feel comfortable being there. But our existence to Billy and to the tag in general was that we were inherently sexual. We were inherently adults. We were inherently not safe for work. Our existence in and of itself should be flagged and banned for pornography. Do you see how uncomfortable that is? It was this beacon of white fragility that you could only be a pure white girl in order to be accepted, and it excluded a lot of people. And this is also bled into how people consumed Lolita as a book and the movies. Dolores was no longer a person, or at least she was no longer a romanticized ideal of girlhood. She was now Dolores the Martyr. This is Lolita in the Me Too era. Dolores is the perfect prim white girl who was abused by an older man. And a lot of time was spent explaining Lolita. A lot of time was spent explaining her trauma. A lot of times it was spent relating to her trauma. There were more blogs with disclaimers saying Lolita is not a love story and do not follow me if you romanticize the relationship between Dolores and Humbert than there was actually appreciating the book. The book became stripped of nuance because people were so concerned with proving that they were morally pure people that there was no real appreciation for the novel that Nabokov wrote. And it all loops back around to this purity culture that was created, where you were only valid if you were this virginal white girl. If you're a girl of color and you posted in the tag, 9 times out of 10, Billy would sub-post about you, calling you not safe for work or overtly sexual. And this bled into how she interacted with even other girls in the tag. There was a post she made where she blamed teenagers and young girls for getting hit on by older men on TikTok because they shouldn't be dressing that way. And that also bled into how she treated people within the tag. There's one user, Rosebud Angel, aka Bunny, and they can and should be allowed to wear whatever they want. There was more lower cut dresses, crop tops, shorts. It was an echo of the style from Generation 1. And they were the only person who Billy would not be passive aggressive to for dressing that way. Anyone else would get DMs from her or sub posts, or there was one time before I unfollowed her, Billy answered an ask, and the ask said, "Hey, could you do one of those posts that are like different types of Doelets?" Billy said there are only 2 types, ones I like and ones I don't like. And you can tell by how she treated people. If she didn't like you, she was passive aggressive, she was rude, she was condescending. And this upholding of purity culture is why so many people do not know that the nymphet aesthetic existed before her. People think that it's brand new and it came out in like 2019. They don't know that it's been around since the late 90s and had its major peak in mid to late 2010s. Mid to late 2010s, people don't know it had its peak then. People think that the aesthetic was created in 2019 under the name Doelet and was created by one person, and that person is Billie. And it has led to people thinking that there's lying about the amount of diversity there was. Because a major thing, and I think it's so just malicious that she did this, is anytime anyone, namely me, would mention the amount of diversity and the amount of girls of color that were in the tag prior to the Tumblr purge, she would sit and go, no, there weren't. There weren't any girls of color before then. There was only blonde girls. She would actively erase the diversity and made multiple people look like they were liars. And she would just act like they didn't exist. And if you did say, no, yeah, a lot of us were there. Like, Tosin is a great example. Tosin was huge, not just within the small sub-community of Black nymphets, but of nymphet culture in general. She was a huge, like, icon just for Black girls because she was unapologetically herself and she was able to be soft and dainty in a way that many Black girls do not feel that they're allowed to. And so seeing someone, like a beautiful dark-skinned girl, be very just feminine and delicate and allowed herself this space to be vulnerable without having to put on this just facade of being tough was amazing. She like was an icon. She was one of the biggest girls you will ever see there. And to Billie, there was no Black girls. There was no girls of colors. In her words, if there were, that's great, but there weren't any. Does that not like seem just horrible? And it was just the erasure of just women of color in general that was just so insidious. Like, she would just insist that they weren't there. And that also played into the double standards. Like, as I said before, Bunny can and should be allowed to wear whatever they want and behave whatever they want. But Billie would show favoritism in the way that she would be very mean and passive-aggressive to everyone else that wasn't Bunny. And Bunny was allowed to dress however they wanted. But this led to some unfortunate resentment towards Bunny by many girls. They didn't like them because they saw the special treatment that Billie was giving them. And it was just very unfortunate because it led to Bunny being excluded by other people because they're just like, well, I don't want to be around this person because Bunny can post and dress however they want, but if I do it, Billie is DMing me, telling me that I can't do it. Or she's making posts about me, acting like I'm some scourge from God. And this is why fashion took a huge toll during this era, but we think that Billie was very insecure and felt the need to bring everyone down with her. Bunny was the only person allowed to wear cute clothes and cute makeup because they were very popular already without her. They had thousands of followers already, were very popular. And Billie knew that if Bunny left, multiple people would too, because despite not liking them, people wanted to be them, or they wanted to be in close proximity to them. And fashion took a huge turn because Billie only owned or only showed herself wearing very plain clothing. There was no more theatrics, there was no more flamboyance, there was no more expressing this very romanticized view of girlhood. It was jeans and t-shirts and regular beat-up sneakers, because when you're an insecure person, you don't want other people to upstage you, especially when it's coming from someone who is already very just hostile towards Black girls. There's a lot of hostility towards Black girls from Billie, and that leaked into the rest of the aesthetic. Black girls are seen as more aggressive. black girls were the main target of any arguments, a black girl would probably be catching the brunt of it. And when you have someone who goes off on another black girl for quote-unquote denying her sisterhood, it's just a very uncomfortable space for many people to be in, and especially if you're a girl of color. And this upholding of white fragility and white femininity led to a culture of purity politics, and it led to a lack of self-expression. If you do not express yourself in the way that this one white woman says that you have to, you are automatically pornographic. These reasons are why so many of us die divesting ourselves from the Doelet tag. Many of us do not wish to be a part of a racist and slut-shaming aesthetic because we feel we should be allowed to express ourselves in ways that are comfortable to us. And that's why many of us do not associate with other people who use the term Doelet, because despite many of them not knowing, they're contributing to a culture of racism and slut-shaming through association with an aesthetic that is made for, created by, and catered to a very narrow view of femininity that is only allowed to white girls. Only white girls are allowed to seem delicate in that tag. And that's why many of us really don't want to use it, and we don't want other people to use it, because we don't want to contribute to a culture of racism and victim blaming. And this unsavory behavior is what led to the resurgence of the coquette tag.